Hello everybody, welcome to my channel. My name is Liz and today I'm going to be sharing with y'all how I think I got into the University of Notre Dame. So when I was a senior in high school, I applied to a lot of different colleges, a pretty wide range of colleges, and it probably was too many, but I do think I learned a lot from the whole application process, and I just want to share that all with you guys today. So without further ado, let's get into the video. So basically, I'm going to be splitting this up into 3 parts. The first is going to be my high school stats, all of my nitty-gritty application stuff, all my standardized testing scores, stuff like that. The second part will be my application process, so what I did for the writing supplements, kind of where I applied early, where I applied regular, stuff like that. And then the third part will be my overall advice for y'all. I definitely think I have a lot of things that I learned along the way, a lot of tips and tricks to share with y'all. Okay, so starting off with my stats, I'm just gonna be looking off my phone, so excuse that. So my high school GPA was out of a 100-point scale, so I had a 100.42. So that was weighted, that was with all of my AP classes in there, and some honors classes that brought it up over 100. My rank was number 2 out of 153. My sister was first. So that was a fun time. I decided to use my SAT scores because I'm not really a science person. So even though I did take the ACT once, I didn't do that great. So I decided to use my SAT. So I got a 760 on the math section and a 730 on the English section. So that rounded up to a 1490 total. On the writing, I got a 19 out of 24, which I think is kind of like average. I don't know. I really only took that because 1 or 2 of my schools actually required it, but honestly, most of my schools did not need me to include the writing. For reference, I took the SAT 3 times. So the first time I didn't use any of my scores. They both were decent, but I just didn't really love both of the sections. And then the second and third times I used the English from my first time and the math from my second time. So I ended up super scoring, which if you don't know what super scoring is, that's basically when you take one of the parts of the SAT from 2 different tests and you combine them to get one better score. So that's what I did. I also took 8 APs in high school. So my sophomore year, I took AP World History, which I got a 3 on. In my junior year, I took AP US History, which I got a 5 on, and AP English Language, which I got a 5 on as well. In my senior year, pretty much my whole schedule was APs. So I took AP English Literature, which I got a 4 on, AP Physics C Mechanics, which I got a 3 on, and to be honest, I thought I was gonna get like a 1. That was a struggle bus of a class, so thank you to my teacher for helping me out. I also took AP Studio Art, which I got a 4 on, AP Calc AB, which I got a 4 on, and AP Gov, which I also got a 4 on. Disclaimer about the APs, obviously every school does not offer these classes. Some schools might offer IB classes or just honors classes, but basically just take whatever class is best for you, take whatever class you think you can do well in. Moving on, another part of my application was my honors and awards. So over the years, I got various department awards for like my academic subjects. And then I also got a bunch of music department awards. I was very involved in my music department in high school, which I will get into in a bit. I also was a Western New York Scholar Athlete in my senior year. I was on the honor roll for all 4 years. I received the University of Rochester George Eastman Young Leaders Award in 11th grade, as well as the George Washington University Book Award in 11th grade, and I was part of the National Hispanic Recognition Program my senior year. Okay, and the last part of my stats section of this video is going to be my extracurriculars. So I think this is the part of the application process that people place such a big importance on and people can kind of go crazy with. I know I did a little bit, so I'm just going to share with y'all what I did in high school to stay involved. Obviously, don't do something if you just think it's going to look good on your college application or your resume, because if you're miserable while you're doing it, it's just not going to be worthwhile, and it's not going to be something that you're passionate about and you want to continue or you want to write about, and that's going to come through in your application. So for my extracurriculars, I danced for 14 years. I was very involved at my dance studio. I did a lot of performances with them. I ended up working over the summer there, my sophomore through senior year, and I was a long-term sub there as well in my senior year. I also volunteered at an organization called Danceability for 3 years in high school, which was super fun and definitely was one of my favorite things that I did all of high school. Like I said, I also was really involved in my music program. So I did the musicals every year. I was involved in a lot of bands, so jazz band, concert band, pep marching band. Also was involved in a lot of choruses, so SSA choir, concert choir, women's choir, jazz choir. I was band co-media director my senior year, I think. Yes, senior year. And then concert choir librarian, also my senior year. I was a class officer for 4 years, so my freshman year I was sergeant at arms, and then I was president for 10th and 11th grade and vice president my senior year. I also was an editor for the newspaper from 10th to 12th grade, and I did varsity golf. Was not the best at that, but I did it for 6 years. I went to sectionals my senior year and literally came in last place. My coach didn't believe me, and I was like, I'm doing bad. And he's like, you're not doing that bad. I was like, no, I'm doing pretty bad. And I came in dead last, which honestly I'm kind of proud of, so why not? Okay, moving on to the second part of this video, which is going to be my application process. So this process took months. I think I started my Common App in the beginning of August, and I didn't finish my whole process until the beginning of January. I applied to Northwestern on the very last day that you could apply because I freaked out and I thought I didn't have enough schools, which was dumb because I had too many schools. So the schools that I applied to, I split into 3 groups. So we had my safety schools, which were schools that just because of my SAT score and just my extracurriculars and just my general application, I had a really good chance of getting in, and that if I did get in, the financial aid from those schools would be sufficient enough for me to be able to go there. So my mid-tier schools were schools that my scores technically fell in the range to get in. However, it still could go either way. Their acceptance rates were a little bit lower, and I just couldn't really bank on definitely getting in, but I thought I had a good shot. And then the third category was my reach schools. So these were schools with pretty low acceptance rates. Even if my scores were in their range, it still was not a given that I would get in. They just didn't take that many people, so it was kind of a crapshoot. Like, we'll see. Yeah. So the safety schools that I applied to were Hofstra, Pitt, Marist, Elon, New Paltz, Michigan State, and Miami, Ohio. So they were kind of spread out all over the place. However, most of my New York schools were in that category just because I really didn't want to stay in New York State. I knew I wanted to go out of state. Most of these schools were a little bit more reasonable with their financial aid. Either they gave more financial aid or they just had more opportunities for scholarships. So I felt like if I did get in, that I would really actually be able to go there and it wouldn't be too much of a stretch. Moving on to my mid-tier schools, a lot of these could have fallen into the reach category as well. So these schools included Notre Dame, yay, UNC Chapel Hill, Washington University in St. Louis, and Syracuse University. So of these ones, I applied to Notre Dame and UNC Chapel Hill Early Action. So if you don't know what that means, that basically is there are different pools for the application process, and early action is the earliest one you can do. So you're basically just telling the college that if you got admitted, you would really love to go there. You're not committing to that school necessarily, but you are just putting in your application early. You're taking that initiative and you are getting in before the regular decision pool. It's also important to note that this is not the same as early decision. Early decision is a binding agreement where you have decided that you will definitely be going to that college. Early action is not that. That's just saying that you would like to apply early, you would like to apply in the first pool, and that if you got in, there's a really good chance that you would want to go there, not that you have to go there. And then finally, my reach schools were schools that I didn't really think I had a great shot of getting into. When you see which schools I got into and which ones I didn't, this makes sense. Just because their acceptance rates were really, really low. I had scores that were kind of in the range, but they were definitely on the lower end. And even though I would really love to go there, I wasn't banking on them too much. I just really wanted to see if I could get in because I loved the schools in general. So these schools included U Chicago, which I applied to Early Action, Northwestern, Columbia, Duke, and University of Pennsylvania. So of those 16 schools, I got into 13 of them. The only 3 that I did not get into were Columbia, Duke, and the University of Pennsylvania. So once I found out about all the schools, it took a little bit because I did know about Notre Dame pretty early on, and that was definitely one of the top ones that I was considering. Obviously, I decided to go there, so it worked out well. but the other ones I was still waiting to hear back for a while. I don't think I got all of my decisions in, well, till Ivy Day, but the rest of them were from like the middle of March. So I definitely did not like the waiting process at all, especially because a lot of my safety schools were the ones that I found out about initially. But in the end, it came down to 3 schools. So those ended up being Notre Dame, UChicago, and Northwestern. I really thought I was going to end up in a city on the East Coast somewhere, and then all of my final choices were in the Midwest, so yay. So UChicago was interesting because when we visited there, I hadn't taken my SAT the final time, and I did not have the scores to get in yet. We were really visiting for my sister, so when we visited, I was not paying attention at all. I thought it was a beautiful campus, but I just was not thinking about it for me at all. And I think a lot of the reason I actually considered it was just, it was the best school I got into. I was really surprised that I even got in, so I felt like I had to consider it. But once I looked at it more, I just realized that the program wasn't necessarily the best fit for me. I really wanted a big football school, a school with a great band program, and while it did have a lot of great qualities about it, that piece of it really just kind of sealed the deal and is ultimately what made me decide to cut that from my list at the end. Northwestern I also really loved. This is not a reason to pick the school, but my favorite color is purple. And their acceptance thing that they sent me was like purple and shiny, and that shouldn't sway me, but like it did. So I loved the campus. Everyone was so nice. The program was really awesome. But ultimately I ended up deciding that I didn't want to be in a city, which is unfortunate because a ton of the schools that I applied to were in cities, so that automatically took like half of my schools off the list. And then finally, Notre Dame. I will get into this more. I think I'm gonna make a why I chose Notre Dame video at some point, so stay tuned for that. But ultimately, I thought it just had the best kind of mesh of school spirit and a great program and a beautiful campus, and the people there were just so nice and so welcoming, and I just got great vibes when I went to the campus. So ultimately, that is the decision I chose. So now for the advice section. Like you obviously have gotten from the rest of this video, I applied to a lot of schools. And while that is not necessarily a bad thing, I would not recommend it highly. So my number one piece of advice is don't apply to too many schools. Obviously, if you really like a lot of schools, it doesn't hurt to apply. Don't be afraid to apply places. But if you don't really want to go there, if you don't think you would be really happy there, don't bother applying. It's just going to waste time, money, energy. So really choose the schools that you apply to carefully. My next piece of advice is spend time on your writing. So this is really what I think got me into my schools. Like you saw, all of my stats and my scores, my grades were pretty good, but I don't think they were anything like crazy. I think they're definitely attainable. So I really think that what got me into the schools that I got into was my writing and the extra stuff, because that's what shows your personality. That's what shows your character and just how you interact with other people, how you live your life, and that's what they want to see. My common application essay, for example, was about Disney because I love Disney. So I started it off with like a dramatic point of view of me running through Disney and falling and like cutting open my knee, and I worded it like it was like a horror movie, but it was Disney, and I was like too happy. So there are a lot of creative ways you can interpret the prompts that they give you. I really encourage you to take the time and think these through, because this is a super important part of your application. This is what brings your application to life. This is what gets them to know you. My next piece of advice is build relationships. If you have opportunities to go to like information nights in your area, I know for me, a lot of hotels would host different colleges and they would do little info sessions. A lot of them would come together, so you could knock off like 5 schools in one night, which was super helpful. The most important thing about those nights, though, is that you need to talk to the people who run them. I know when I started doing that process, I was so scared to talk to people. I didn't want to approach any of the people running the panel, and I was so scared to ask my mundane little questions, but it really, really helped, and it really made advocating for myself a lot easier. They want to get to know you, you want to get to know the school, so it makes sense. They want to have a conversation. My next piece of advice is prep for your interviews. Some colleges hold interviews, some don't, some just do it if you're in the area, some do them virtually. It really varies, but if you can get an interview, number one, take the interview. Don't turn down the opportunity for an interview, even if you're nervous. I promise doing that interview will help you build a little bit of a personal connection with the school and will help them get to know you in a more well-rounded light. So I had one for the University of Pennsylvania, Washington, St. Louis, and Northwestern. The one for UPenn did not go well. I just was so nervous, and I really didn't make the effort to elaborate on any of the answers that I was giving this guy, and I could tell he kind of was just reading off a checklist of things to ask me, and I should have elaborated on them more, but I didn't because I was so nervous. So I really didn't get a chance to talk about any of the things I was really passionate about, or if I did, I touched on it so briefly that it really wouldn't make an impact on the conversation as a whole. My Washington St. Louis one, I think I came in a little bit more prepared. I had written down ahead of time some talking points I knew I definitely wanted to cover, which is so helpful. And I think if you just make sure, okay, I want to talk about why I'm passionate about this part of my major, or I really want to talk about this one experience I had with volunteering or with my school, then you go into it with a little bit better of a game plan instead of just let me think back on my 18 years of life and why that should make you admit me to your college. I just don't think the conversation was the most natural of conversations, and it definitely felt like I was just kind of reading off my resume and again, not really having the chance to elaborate on anything that I was really passionate about or anything that would really bring my application to life more than what was already on my Common App. However, my Northwestern interview was so fun. We talked for almost 3 hours and she was just absolutely lovely. We talked about everything. We touched on a lot of the stuff on my resume, but she really gave me the opportunity to expand on things. I talked about my major more than I had in any other interview, and it honestly was like a really therapeutic process for me because I decided on my major really late into the whole process. I thought I was going to go for education up until the July, I think, before my senior year. But then I totally switched gears and I decided to go the more artsy route and go for film and television and theater. And so that was a really big shift for me. So getting to externally process that with an interviewer and let her know my thought process and how this whole college application process has been for me through the lens of Northwestern was really helpful. And I think we just had a really great conversation. They want to meet people that they can talk to, that they think are going to fit in well with their student body, that they think is going to be involved, that they think is going to be an asset to their community. And you want to let them see that that's who you are. My second to last tip is to visit campus if you can. So obviously right now, that is very hard to do. I know a lot of colleges are doing like single family tours, which is really nice. But also if you're just really far away from a school or you don't have the financial means to go to visit a school, there are also really great virtual tour options that have always been around, but I think now even more so is just a very viable option for getting to know a school. I liked a lot of the schools I was applying to. I didn't have anything wrong with them, but I just wasn't like in love with any of them. But I went to Notre Dame and I definitely got that say yes to the dress moment. Say yes to the college? That should be a show. Say yes to the college. I would do that show. I think that'd be a fun time. I think I honestly would have still ended up picking Notre Dame in the end, but it made me so much more confident in my decision, and I honestly didn't have any second thoughts about it once I made that choice because of my campus visit. So I think that just definitely helped me a lot and just gave me a little bit more confidence in the process as a whole. And my very last but most important, I think, piece of advice with the college admissions process is be your own advocate. Do not sell yourself short. I know this was something that I struggled with a lot in my college application process. I did not have much confidence in my test scores, in my extracurriculars, just in my application in general. I think a lot of this had to do with the fact that I was applying at the same time as my sister, who, like you guys know, is obviously very accomplished. She goes to Harvard now, so very happy for her. But I think that that definitely kind of gave me a bad mentality about the whole application process, because while I was comparing myself to a ton of other applicants who were applying to the same school, I also was comparing myself to my sister, who wasn't even really applying to the same schools that I was, which is not a good thing to do. So focus on you for as much as you can. Be proud of your test scores, be proud of your accomplishments. Don't be afraid to talk about them. Don't take your accomplishments lightly, because you never know what's going to make them really love your application. You never know what's going to push your application over the edge. Don't be afraid to reach out and advocate for yourself, because you're awesome and you will get into a great school that is a great fit for you. So that is it for my college application process. I definitely think I learned a lot. It was a very stressful process, I'm not gonna lie. I would so not wish to do it again. I know I'll have to do that kind of again when I apply to grad school, but we don't want to think about that yet. Thank you guys so much for watching. Before you go, don't forget to like, comment, and hit that subscribe button down below. I hope you all have a lovely day, and I'll see you soon. Bye!